Shortly after midnight on April 16, 2026, a 16-year-old boy picked up a phone and called 911. He was inside the house on Guinevere Drive in Annandale, Virginia, the house where he had grown up, the house where his mother ran the household and made the appointments and cooked the meals and showed up at every event and quietly carried the weight of everything while his father's world collapsed around them. He told the dispatcher he thought his dad might have stabbed his mom. He said she was lying on the ground bleeding, holes in her shirt. His voice was on a recording that would later be captured in dispatch audio and circulated in news reports. He was 16 years old, and the thing he had just found was his mother, Dr. Cerina Fairfax, shot multiple times in the basement of their home. His father, former Virginia Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, was upstairs. When officers searched the home, they found him in the primary bedroom with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The same firearm had been used in both shootings. He was 47 years old. She was 49. Their two teenage children, the son who had made the call and his younger sister, were both in that house when it happened. The police chief who held the press conference the following morning said something that deserves to be stated at the start of this story before anything else is said about politics or careers or scandal or court filings. He said it was certainly a traumatic event for those children to live through. That is the understatement of a law enforcement official trying to maintain composure while describing something almost impossible to describe. Two teenagers, one house, a mother found in a basement, a father found upstairs, and a 16-year-old boy who had to be the one to call for help. Welcome to Behind the Evidence. This channel goes past the headline and into the full picture, the person behind the case, the warning signs that were visible before the worst happened, and the systems and circumstances that shaped what occurred. If you are new here, subscribe now. We cover cases like this every week because the stories that matter most are the ones that deserve more than a news cycle. Now let's start with who Cerina Fairfax was, because she is the person at the center of this story. Dr. Cerina Fairfax was 49 years old. She was a dentist, a mother, and by every account from the people who knew her, exactly the kind of person who holds a family and a community together through the force of her own consistency and care. She had graduated from Duke University and then from the Virginia Commonwealth University School of Dentistry. VCU honored her in 2015 as its outstanding DDS graduate of the last decade. She ran her own family dental practice in Fairfax County. She was, according to a profile on her practice's website, an avid reader who loved to travel, practice yoga, go on trail runs with her dogs, and spend time with her wonderful family. That last phrase, her wonderful family, appears on the professional profile of a woman who was, at the time that profile was written, presumably still hopeful about what that family could be. Who believed, at some point, that the structure she had built and the life she had created alongside her husband had a future that was worth describing in the present tense. The profile did not have a timestamp visible to the public. But the distance between the woman who wrote about her wonderful family and the woman who eventually installed surveillance cameras throughout her home to protect herself from accusations she knew were false tells the story of a marriage that traveled an enormous and painful distance over a relatively short period of time. Fairfax County Police Chief Kevin Davis, at his press conference on April 17, 2026, described the situation as a complicated or messy divorce. That phrase, complicated or messy, is a measured understatement from a law enforcement official who had just spent hours at a crime scene that had been someone's home. What the court documents tell a more detailed story. What those documents reveal, taken together, is a household that had been under severe and sustained pressure for years. A marriage that had been deteriorating across multiple dimensions simultaneously, and a situation that a family court judge had formally identified as dangerous and escalating months before April 16th. Let's go back to where the descent began, because understanding how this household arrived at midnight on April 16th requires understanding what the years before it looked like. Justin Fairfax was elected Lieutenant Governor of Virginia in 2017. He was 47 years old at the time of his death, which means he was in his late 30s when he won that race, and he won it while making history as only the second African-American ever elected statewide in Virginia. He was, by every external measure, exactly the kind of political figure that generates excitement and momentum, and the sense that larger things are coming. He had worked as an assistant United States attorney, handling major crimes cases. He had built a legal career. He was articulate, well-connected, and positioned at exactly the right moment in the political landscape for someone with his background and profile to rise. The rise stopped in 2019. Two women came forward with allegations of sexual assault, both stemming from incidents they said occurred years before Fairfax's political career began. He denied both allegations completely and consistently. He was never criminally charged in connection with either claim. He called for a full criminal investigation into both allegations, saying he was confident that what he was saying was true and had voluntarily submitted to polygraph examinations that he said he passed. The allegations were never adjudicated in a criminal court. Both women were interviewed publicly and described the difficulty and cost of coming forward. The legal record on the criminal side of those allegations is that no charges were ever filed. That is the full and factually accurate account of where those allegations stand. What the allegations did produce, regardless of their legal status, was the effective end of Justin Fairfax's political and professional trajectory. He resigned from his position as a partner at a prestigious law firm. Friends described him as effectively unemployable in the circles where he had built his career. He ran for governor in 2021 and lost. A friend who spoke to the Associated Press in the aftermath of the murder-suicide said that Fairfax never moved past the 2019 scandal, that the wound it produced, the professional collapse, the reputational damage, the loss of the future he had been building, never healed. It became a permanent fixture of his internal landscape, something he returned to repeatedly and could not integrate into a version of himself that still had forward motion. The judge who oversaw the divorce proceedings wrote about this directly in his March 30th, 2026 custody order, a document filed just 17 days before the shooting. Judge Timothy McAvoy wrote that it was difficult to imagine the degree to which Fairfax's world must have been damaged by the allegations made against him. He wrote that Justin Fairfax's mental and emotional health suffered after two significant setbacks: an earlier unsuccessful political campaign in 2013, and then the 2019 allegations. After the first setback, the judge noted, it took about a month for him to recover and return to full participation in family life. After the second, he never recovered. He drank heavily and withdrew from his family, in a pattern that the judge characterized as ongoing and worsening, rather than situational and finite. Cerina Fairfax testified during the divorce proceedings that her husband drank daily. She described his living space within their shared home, the separate bedroom he occupied while they were separated but still living under the same roof, as littered with empty wine bottles. She noted that he had used money intended for their children's horseback riding lessons to purchase a handgun in 2022. That detail, the handgun bought with money that had been designated for his children's activities, is one that court documents flagged as significant, and the year that gun was purchased produced its own alarming incident. In 2022, Justin Fairfax left the family home with the gun and a suitcase of clothes. His family did not know where he had gone. A search was initiated before he was eventually found in the woods of a public park near the family home. The judge who reviewed this incident in the custody order wrote that it was clear Fairfax had been experiencing some kind of adverse psychological event during that episode. Friends of Fairfax had been aware of concerning statements about his state of mind. One friend said later that there had been talks of suicidal thoughts among the people close to him, and that she and others had repeatedly urged him to seek professional help. The judge noted in his order that there was no evidence Fairfax was seeking any professional support for his mental health, and that this was very concerning to the court. These are the words of a sitting judge, in a formal legal document, describing a man who had exhibited behavior consistent with a crisis, who owned a firearm, who had left the family home with that firearm and had to be found in the woods, who was drinking daily, and who was showing no signs of accessing the professional help that everyone around him recognized he needed. Those words were written on March 30th, 2026, 17 days before April 16th. Cerina had filed for divorce on July 18, 2025. By the time of the shooting, the divorce proceedings were well advanced and had produced outcomes that fundamentally altered the practical landscape of Justin Fairfax's daily life. The judge had granted Cerina primary physical custody of both children. He had ordered Justin Fairfax to leave the family home by the end of April 2026. He had been ordered to test for alcohol an hour before any visits with the children, and in the weeks leading up to the shooting, he had been served with additional court paperwork related to an upcoming proceeding. Police Chief Davis said at the press conference that this paperwork may have been a spark, that detectives would work to understand exactly what had led to the events of that night. The divorce filings paint a picture of financial collapse running parallel to the psychological one. Cerina Fairfax alleged in documents filed in July 2025 that her husband had failed to financially support the family, including failing to pay half of their children's private school tuition, their extracurricular activities, and the mortgage. She argued that these obligations had been outlined in a post-nuptial agreement that he did not fulfill. Court records showed that Justin Fairfax had been sued twice in warrant and debt cases tied to thousands of dollars in unpaid debts, with both cases resulting in default judgments in favor of the banks. He appeared to be financially unable to secure his own separate residence, which was part of why the couple had remained in the same house, in separate bedrooms, for the duration of the divorce proceedings. Think about the geometry of that living situation. A separated couple, a deteriorating marriage, active divorce proceedings, a court order for him to leave, a history of mental health crisis involving the firearm that was still in the house, two teenagers living inside all of it, navigating school and their own development and the specific peculiar daily reality of growing up in a house where the marriage had ended but the physical presence of both parents had not. And a woman who had been holding all of it together on her own, who the judge described as the planner, the scheduler, the caretaker, the cook, the disciplinarian, the primary nurturer, who had been doing all of those things while also working part-time as a dentist running her own practice, while also appearing to be the primary earner in a household where her husband's income had effectively collapsed. Judge McAvoy wrote something in his custody order that stands as one of the most precise and devastating assessments in any court document connected to this case. He wrote that the children's remarkable resilience and early success in life came down to what can best be described as mother's grit. Mother's grit. The specific, grinding, sustained quality of a woman who refuses to let everything fall apart even when everything around her is falling apart, who shows up for her children every single day regardless of what is happening in the rest of her life, who is simultaneously the primary parent and the primary earner, and the emotional anchor for two teenagers who are watching their family dissolve and need someone to still be present and reliable and whole. Cerina Fairfax was that someone. She had been that someone for years, and the court recognized it explicitly in a document that was entered into the formal legal record 17 days before she was killed. 1 month earlier, in the weeks leading up to the March custody order, there had been an incident that the court record documents in detail. Justin Fairfax alleged that Cerina had assaulted him. Police were called to the family home, but Cerina had installed surveillance cameras around the interior of the house. Those cameras captured the events in question. When detectives reviewed the footage, what they found contradicted Justin Fairfax's account. The alleged assault, according to police, had never occurred. The cameras showed it had not happened, That filing was assessed as false. The cameras that Cerina had installed, the same cameras that would later be used by investigators to corroborate the sequence of events on the night of April 16th, had originally been put up because she needed documentation, because she understood, at some level, that the situation she was living in required evidence, that her account of what was happening inside that house might need to be verified by something other than her own word. That is not the behavior of someone who is unaware of her circumstances. It is the behavior of someone who is navigating a dangerous situation with the tools available to her, someone who has thought carefully about how to protect herself, and who has taken deliberate, practical steps toward that protection. Those cameras, in a terrible and painful irony, became the primary tool through which investigators confirmed what happened on April 16th. They were set up to protect her. They became the record of the night she died. Shortly after midnight on April 16th, 2026, the sequence of events that those cameras captured and that police have since described unfolded over the course of minutes inside the house on Guinevere Drive. An argument, or an approach, or a moment that marked the end of whatever fragile coexistence had been holding the household together since the separation began, moved into the basement. Cerina Fairfax was shot multiple times in that basement. Justin Fairfax then went upstairs to the primary bedroom. He used the same gun. Their 16-year-old son called 911. He told the dispatcher what he had found. Officers responded and discovered both adults inside the home. The children were taken from the scene and placed with family members. The house on Guinevere Drive, a short walk from an elementary school in a quiet Annandale neighborhood, became a crime scene. In the hours and days that followed, the public responses came from every direction. Politicians who had worked alongside Justin Fairfax expressed shock and grief. Former Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, who had served alongside Fairfax as governor, called the news heartbreaking. Senator Mark Warner said it was awful news, and that the idea of the teenage children being in the house made it a huge tragedy. Senator Tim Kaine said he and Warner were very heartbroken. A family friend wrote on social media that she had spoken with Justin via text 2 days before, that he was not in a good place, that she had never seen the specific outcome coming even though she had been concerned, that she and others had tried to encourage him and felt they had failed. She said, "May God bless the Fairfax children." That phrase, the Fairfax children, is where this case ultimately lands. 2 teenagers who were inside that house. A 16-year-old who made a phone call that no child should ever have to make. A younger sibling who was also present in a house where that sequence of events occurred. 2 young people who are now navigating a grief that has no clean shape. The loss of a mother they loved, and a father whose final act made that loss incomprehensible in ways that extend far beyond the ordinary experience of bereavement. A friend who had been close to the family noted that Cerina had been starting to plan college visits for both of her children in the weeks before her death. She was looking ahead. She was, as she had always been, organizing the future for her family while managing the present, planning the next step, being the scheduler, the planner, the person who makes sure the children get where they are supposed to go. She was 49 years old. She had built a dental practice from the ground up. She had been recognized by her professional school as its outstanding graduate of the decade. She had raised 2 children who a judge described as remarkably resilient because of her grit, because of her consistency, because of the specific quality of her presence in their lives, even when everything around them was difficult. She loved trail runs and yoga, and her dogs and reading and travel, and her wonderful family. She deserved to finish planning those college visits. She deserved to see what her children became. She deserved to get to the end of the divorce process and begin whatever the next chapter of her life looked like on the other side of it. She was getting there. The court had given her custody. The court had ordered him out. The process was moving in the direction of resolution. She was almost through. The warning signs in this case were not invisible. A judge had written them down. A court order had named them. Friends had acknowledged them to each other and to him directly. A gun purchase, a 2022 crisis in the woods, daily drinking, financial collapse, an incident that cameras showed had not happened the way he described it, a history of withdrawal and isolation that the judge characterized as a manifestation of fatalism and hopelessness. All of it was in the record. All of it was known by someone. And none of it produced the intervention that would have changed what happened at midnight on April 16th. There is no trial in this case. There is no courtroom where Cerina's family can stand and read a victim impact statement into the legal record. There is no sentencing hearing. There is no point in the legal process where the weight of what happened is formally measured and a consequence is assigned. What there is two teenagers with family members, a dental practice that will not reopen, a house on Guinevere Drive that is now a crime scene, and a community of people who are trying to figure out how to honor the memory of a woman who held everything together for years and who deserved to still be here. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of harming themselves or others, please reach out immediately. Call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you or someone you know is in a relationship where the warning signs are present, isolation, escalating control, threats, false accusations, and access to firearms, please take that seriously and reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Free, confidential, available 24 hours a day by call, text, and chat at the hotline.org. Subscribe to Behind the Evidence. Share this video for Cerina, for the children who are going to need a world that remembers their mother as more than a headline. Behind the evidence, there is always more, and we are always going to find it.